Some people become more informed as they grow older. Others become wiser. The difference is not how many facts they collect, how many books they finish, or how confidently they speak. Wisdom begins when knowledge changes the way a person interprets pain, power, relationships, responsibility, and the limits of control. That is why no single book can teach wisdom completely. One book may teach you how to govern your mind. Another may show you how to live among others. A third may reveal what remains when life takes everything away. A fourth may challenge the need for approval. And the final book may help you recognize the invisible forces shaping your choices before you even know a choice is being made. These 5 books belong together because each one corrects a different form of blindness. And by the end, you may discover that the book you need first is not necessarily the one you expected. Meditations begins with one of the most important distinctions a human being can learn: the difference between what happens and what you do with what happens. Marcus Aurelius was not writing for an audience. He was writing reminders to himself while carrying responsibilities few people could imagine. He faced political conflict, illness, war, betrayal, grief, and the pressure of ruling an empire. Yet the central battle in his private reflections was rarely against the world. It was against irritation, vanity, fear, judgment, and the temptation to become morally careless under pressure. The strongest idea in meditations is not simply that you should remain calm. It is that your character is built in the space between an event and your response. Someone insults you. The insult is real, but the meaning you attach to it is partly yours. A plan fails. The failure may hurt, but whether it becomes humiliation, instruction, or redirection depends on the mind receiving it. Another person behaves badly. Their behavior belongs to them. Your response belongs to you. This sounds simple until life becomes unfair. Most people can appear disciplined when circumstances cooperate. Wisdom is revealed when circumstances do not. Meditations teaches that peace does not come from arranging the world perfectly. It comes from becoming less easily ruled by what the world does. But there is a limitation. A person can become so focused on inner discipline that wisdom begins to look solitary. You may learn to govern yourself and still fail to understand how to live well with other people. That is where the Analects enters. Confucius does not begin with the isolated individual. He begins with relationships, parents and children, leaders and citizens, teachers and students, friends, families, communities, and institutions. The Analects asks a question Meditations does not fully answer. What does wisdom look like when your choices affect everyone around you? Its deepest lesson is that character is not merely private, it is social. Respect, restraint, sincerity, responsibility, and proper conduct are not empty formalities. They are the structures that make trust possible. A wise person does not only ask, "What do I feel like doing?" He asks, "What does this role require of me?" That question can transform ordinary life. A leader may have the power to command, but if he lacks integrity, obedience will eventually turn into resentment. A parent may provide money, but fail to provide presence. A friend may speak honestly, but without compassion, using truth as permission to wound. The Analects reminds us that virtue must become visible in conduct. Wisdom is not proven by what you understand in private. It is proven by what other people experience in your presence. Confucius also understood that culture is built through repetition. Courtesy, attention, loyalty, humility, and responsibility may appear small, but repeated behavior eventually becomes moral atmosphere. Meditations teaches you not to be controlled by the outside world. The Analects teaches you not to behave as though you exist outside it. Yet both books were written from positions in which order still mattered. They assume that discipline and right conduct can help a person live meaningfully. But what happens when order collapses? What remains when dignity, security, status, family, and freedom are taken away? Man's search for meaning begins there. Viktor Frankl's central insight is often reduced to the idea that people need purpose. But the book goes deeper. It argues that meaning is not merely something pleasant that makes life feel better. Meaning can become a form of inner survival. Frankl observed that suffering does not automatically make people noble. Pain can destroy, embitter, or empty a person. What changes suffering is not pain itself, but the relationship a person forms with it. You may not choose the situation. You may not be able to undo the loss, but there may remain one final freedom: the ability to decide what kind of person you will become inside what cannot be changed. This idea is powerful because it refuses both false optimism and hopelessness. Frankl does not tell the reader that everything happens for a good reason. He suggests something more demanding. Even when no good reason can be found, a meaningful response may still be possible. A person loses a career and discovers a deeper vocation. Someone experiences grief and chooses to live in a way that honors what was lost. Another faces suffering that cannot be repaired, but refuses to let pain become the final definition of life. Meditations teaches control over response. The Analects teaches responsibility within relationships. Man's search for meaning teaches that responsibility remains even when life becomes almost unrecognizable. But there is another danger. Sometimes people are not imprisoned by suffering. They are imprisoned by the opinions of others. That is the problem explored in The Courage to be Disliked. This book challenges one of the most common assumptions in modern life: that peace will arrive when enough people approve of us. It rarely does. The more you build your identity around approval, the more power you give away. Every disagreement becomes a threat. Every criticism feels personal. Every decision becomes a negotiation with an imaginary audience. The Courage to be Disliked argues that many emotional struggles are sustained by confusion over responsibility. You begin carrying tasks that belong to other people. Your task is to act honestly and responsibly. Their task is to decide how they feel about it. You can be kind without controlling whether someone likes you. You can offer help without controlling whether it is accepted. You can speak truthfully without controlling every interpretation. This does not mean becoming selfish or indifferent. It means refusing to live as a permanent prisoner of other people's expectations. Imagine someone who chooses a career only to satisfy family approval. From the outside, the decision may appear responsible. Inside, resentment quietly grows. Or consider a person who never sets boundaries because being needed feels safer than being rejected. What looks like generosity may actually be fear wearing a moral disguise. The book's strongest contribution is psychological separation, learning where your responsibility ends and another person's begins. But even this freedom can become incomplete. You may understand control. You may practice virtue. You may create meaning. You may stop chasing approval, and still remain influenced by forces you do not recognize. That is where The Silent Pulls of Human Nature by PISETH becomes the final part of this reading journey. The earlier books largely ask what a person should do. This book begins by examining what is already pulling the person before deliberate thought begins. Fear of exclusion, hunger for status, familiarity mistaken for truth, emotional debts carried from the past, the need to preserve identity, the attraction of power, the quiet influence of repetition, environment, memory, comparison, and social pressure. These forces are rarely loud. That is what makes them powerful. People often imagine that their decisions come from pure reason, but many choices begin as emotional movement and receive logical explanations afterward. A person says he is staying in a harmful situation because he is patient, when he may actually fear uncertainty. Another insists she wants success, while repeatedly choosing environments that protect her from being tested. A leader claims to value honesty, but slowly surrounds himself with people who agree with him. A reader believes he is seeking truth while only accepting ideas that protect an existing identity. The Silent Pulls of Human Nature is valuable because it treats self-knowledge as more than introspection. It becomes a process of detecting influence. Its central contribution is recognition. Before you can resist an invisible force, you must first be able to name it. This is where it complements the other 4 books, rather than competing with them. Meditations teaches you to govern your response, but you must first notice what is provoking you. The Analects teaches you to fulfill your responsibilities, but you must distinguish responsibility from conformity. Man's Search for Meaning teaches you to choose your attitude towards suffering, but you must also recognize the hidden patterns shaping what suffering means to you. The Courage to be Disliked teaches freedom from approval, while The Silent Pulls of Human Nature asks why approval became so powerful in the first place. Together, the 5 books create a complete progression. First, learn to govern your mind. Then, learn to live responsibly among others. Then discover what remains when life becomes painful. Then separate your life from the endless demand for approval. Finally, examine the invisible forces that may still be directing you beneath conscious choice. That is why these books belong together. They do not give the same answer. They protect you from different forms of foolishness. Meditations protects you from emotional impulsiveness. The Analects protects you from selfish individualism. Man's Search for Meaning protects you from despair. The Courage to be Disliked protects you from dependence on approval. The Silent Pulls of Human Nature protects you from believing you fully understand your own motives. So which book should you read first? Begin with Meditations. If your mind is restless and external events control your inner state, begin with the Analects. If you are thinking deeply about leadership, family, responsibility, or the kind of person others can trust, begin with Man's Search for Meaning. If you are enduring loss, uncertainty, or a period in which life no longer feels coherent, begin with The Courage to be Disliked if fear of judgment is shaping your choices. And begin with The Silent Pulls of Human Nature if you sense that unseen patterns are influencing your behavior, relationships, and decisions, but you cannot yet clearly identify them. Which 5 books actually make you wiser? Not the ones that merely give you more information, the ones that make you harder to deceive, slower to judge, stronger under pressure, more responsible in relationships, and more honest about what moves you. These 5 books cannot live your life for you, but together they can help you see the life you are already living with far greater clarity. Which one would you read first, and what question are you hoping it will help you answer? Subscribe to Trillion Books, where 5 books come together to answer one question worth asking. Because wisdom does not begin when you finally possess every answer. It begins when you become capable of seeing what you once missed.